Today we are making one of the 4 OG Roman pastas. This is Amatriciana. That's really hard for me to say, so I'm going to try to not say it too many times in the video. But here's what we need. It's very simple. You need a pasta of your choice. I'm going to use bucatini. You need some tomatoes, crushed or pretty much pureed. You can use San Marzanos if you could find them. You need guanciale. Don't use pancetta. You should be able to find that. And you need a good pec romano. The Romano part is the Roman. Here's the breakdown of the pastas, though. You got your 4 here: cacio e pepe, gricia, carbonara, amatriciana. They basically all are just the previous one with a little added to them. So this one is a cacio e pepe in a sense of you have your cheese that's going to melt into it. You have a little bit of pepper, not nearly as much, but then you get to the area where you add the guanciale, which would make it a gricia. Then you add red sauce, and that's amatriciana. If you added egg yolk instead of the red sauce, you would have a carbonara. I'm just going to pull off some of this herbed skin on the guanciale. I don't really like how it tastes. Some's going to make it in, but you'll see it kind of burns on the bottom of the pan. It's not going to ruin the dish, but if you could find it without that, that would be great. I'm going to cut these kind of just into like lardone shapes here. You want them fairly big. They're going to cook down in the pan, and you want to use that oil and that fat that renders off of them to basically start your sauce. So the more fat you get in that pan, the more flavor you're going to have, and the better it's all going to be. But that's about one portion there. I'm making just for myself here, so you know how much you like to eat. Just kind of scale this up. I'm going to start these in a pan with a little bit of olive oil. You don't really need it because the fat will render out quickly, but I'm going to put them in there fairly cold. I find that's the best way to render out fat. About 3 or 4 minutes later here, they're getting nice and brown. You can see some of those little herbal bits that were on the skin are starting to stick brown to the bottom, but that's totally fine. Just cook these, move them around, make sure you're getting all the sides nice and browned. And then once that's ready, I'm going to come in. I'm going to make sure that they're all cooked nicely. If you have a little bit of fat, that's totally fine still. It'll have a little bit of chew I like. And I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to drain them. I'm going to put them to the side, but we're going to leave all that oil in the Dutch oven or whatever cooking vessel you're currently using. We'll add these back in later, but look at all that oil. That's how you want. That's going to be the basis of this flavor, and then we're going to add the tomatoes right into that. It's obviously going to be hot, so just make sure it doesn't splatter too much. But we're going to mix that together, and we're going to let this reduce for about 15 or 20 minutes. You want to cook all the liquid out of those tomatoes. There's obviously always a little bit of water in them. About 5 minutes in, though, I'm going to drop my pasta. That way those kind of time out. As you can see, I'm terrible at figuring out how much pasta I need. I figured that was about one portion worth. It was a little more than I needed, but here we are just cooking it through. I'm going to add a little bit of salt at this stage. Everything you're adding to this is super salty, so be very careful. The cheese is salty, the guanciale is salty. Don't over season it. Taste it as you go and just be prepared to add a little at the end. But here we are about 15 minutes later, and you can see a lot of the moisture is gone. You're able to push the sauce, and it doesn't fill in right away. So as soon as that pasta was ready, I poured it right in. I saved a little bit of pasta water there on the side, which is exactly what you need to do. Now the last 2 minutes here, we're going to cook in the pot. I'm trying to start to use these metal tongs in the kitchen. It didn't really work here, so you're going to see me switch to regular tongs shortly. But right as you incorporate that, I'm going to add about half of the guanciale just to reheat that and mix it into the pasta, and the other half I'm going to use to garnish. But as you mix it in, get it right where you want it, flavor-wise, salt-wise, thickness-wise, then kill the heat and add that cheese. I like to wait about 10-15 seconds before I pour that cheese in, but that's a good amount there. There's probably about 1/4 of a cup. A little bit of pasta water, mix that all together, and you're basically done. Add more or less cheese depending on how thick and creamy you want it here. Traditionally, there's a good amount of cheese in it. I'm going to add a little more cheese just to get it right where I want it, and then we're ready to go. We're going to plate this up. There's no cream, there's no butter, there's nothing else in this dish. It's incredibly simple. I'm sure this is not nearly as traditional as it should be, but finally putting these tongs to good use. If this was an appetizer, man, that would look beautiful, but this is a dinner portion, so I'm going to throw way more onto this plate. But good to know I can do that. I'm going to grab the little bits of that guanciale that mixed in with the sauce. I'm going to cover them all over the top. I'm going to add those fresh ones, not fresh, but the uncooked ones for garnish right over the top as well. A little bit of black pepper I'm also going to put on the top. That's how I kind of feel like it ties into all the Roman dishes. And then we're going to cover that with some extra pec romano, and you are done. This is just absolutely delicious. All 4 of the Roman pastas are great. I think this is my second favorite behind carbonara, but taste is the most important part, so dive in, get that bite of food while it's hot and fresh, and it's just really delicious. It doesn't taste like your traditional red sauce. The fattiness of that oil and the cheese and everything is just really nice, and you could taste how it's related to those other 4 dishes. Strongly recommend you try this.